What did it feel like to leave your old self? It felt like a lot of things. I can imagine it was something like the aftermath of, say, a war, a big storm, flooding, some kind of weather event. And you know how afterwards there's this stillness, a peacefulness, a quiet, a sense that there's a calm or a calmness after that storm, and that the worst of it was over. Unfortunately, it was only the beginning, I think, of the hardest part, which was reforming my new sense of self, because I had no idea who he was, no idea what he stood for, no idea what he meant to himself, to others. So what it felt like was, sure, that peace and that calm after the storm, but also a completely dysregulated self, anxious, unsure, unclear, not knowing what the future was going to look like, not having a sense of safety, security, and a piece of my own well-being, that I was whole and complete because I had completely unraveled. So in my mind, I had really no idea. Thankfully, I had trust because I had decided, just like I did in the previous videos, that life was only worth living if I was able to be authentic, and now I was on this journey to find out. But boy, my mind was chaotic, up, down, everything in between. My body also, in a state of calm, regulation one moment, then completely dysregulated the next, freaking out, anxious, overwhelmed, sad and depressed, the grief and loss of the person I once was, and also the grief of the person I once was no longer being in my future. And that person had been there my entire life for 42 years. So it was a huge shift. It was like I was clean slated, but on the clean slate was a mammoth level and amount of uncertainty, a mammoth level of not knowing, and not knowing how to know, but just going in a way blindly on this journey, hoping for some anchorage, hoping for some salvation from the pain of not knowing, and going into the wilderness anyway, jumping into the water, jumping out of the plane if it's skydiving, and not knowing, but at the same time knowing without having actualized it just yet. Your mind, body, and spirit started working against you. How? This was hard. I had decided that life was not worth living unless things changed. But I didn't know what the change was, so my mind was trying to sabotage me because it wanted to go back to what it knew. It wanted to go back to what was familiar, and even though it was damaging, familiar felt safe. And my mind wanted to take me back to safety, back to the shore, not into the ocean, not into the deep water, not into the unknown or what was new or authentic. My mind didn't want the change, so it resisted. It told me this is never going to work, Corey. Don't bother trying. You are a fool if you think there's a better way than what we've grown up to know. And those messages were repeated over and over and over. So there were times where I'd have to peel myself off the floor just to function and to live and to do the basics. Eat, shower, dress, be a person in society, take my dog for a walk. The little things became extremely difficult. So as well as my mind trying to stop me from this journey, my body worked against me too, because it became dysregulated. It became unsure, shaky, tremory on the inside, and feeling not safe. This is not familiar. We don't know what this is. So we're going to shake up this body and give him signs not to do this and go back to what he knows. But as we know, the body keeps score, and my body kept score of the past. It was yet to keep score of the future. So although there were multiple dysregulatory moments, the sense of anxiety and the heart pumping, the knots and twists in the tummy, the head just one moment being calm or just peaceful, the next, sometimes a bit of a throbbing in the head. There were a multitude of different things in the body that were saying, don't do this, it's not worth it. And I think the spirit one was maybe one of the hardest. When my spirit let me down, was it kept telling me, your faith is nonsense, and faith is not enough, and it's not going to get you through, and why are you believing in this God, and who is this God, and your faith is not going to anchor you into anything. Faith is fabricated, and you have anchored yourself in faith, but you've given yourself a false sense of security. Faith has not worked. Faith will not work, and your faith is useless. And so even when I was trying to tune into faith, access God, how it worked against me was I felt not as strong a connection, not a strong feeling towards my faith, and that knowing that comes with faith. It was a complete, you're in no man's land and good luck to you. Your suicidal thinking here was different. How? Thankfully, it wasn't as dark as in the previous videos, because I had decided that life was not worth living if I couldn't be authentic. But the body dysregulation, the mind working against me, not having a spiritual anchor, it was like a trifecta that kind of, it led to a darker place, depressive thoughts, and a sense of hopelessness, where the only escape was to leave, to die. Only this time, thankfully, there was an anchor, because although I was moving towards a new unfamiliar self, I was also moving away from an old self that could no longer survive, that could no longer exist or even take another breath because the inauthenticity hurt too much, and that awareness of the inauthenticity, it was enough to stop me in my tracks. And so the new thoughts around death and dying were not as piercing, not as crushing, even though they were, and there were moments where I wanted to leave because of it and listen to that voice. It was I won't say easier, it was less hard to break free from, because I had earlier made a choice that no matter what, I was going to choose a different path. And I also reminded myself that I didn't know yet what I didn't know. So there was still a discovery. So I couldn't make that final choice to leave. I felt I couldn't because I hadn't determined whether this new way of being was worth it, because I hadn't experienced whether or not it was. So the not knowing helped anchor me. Even though it was dysregulating, it was anchoring, because I knew that there was something about the future that I couldn't be sure was going to happen. And so because of that uncertainty, I was able to anchor myself in living, in finding out, and gave myself that purpose to figure it out and to give this a good go before giving up. And at the very least, find out before giving up. And thankfully, that kept me. It kept me on the right side of okay, and I am so grateful for that. You've tried half in, half out before. Why did it stop working? For me, being half authentic, being half myself, being a version of myself that wasn't me, it stopped working because I became aware, and I allowed myself to have awareness of what wasn't working, because I was tired of the fluctuations and all the shifts in my life, that it was almost like a universal prompt to say, Cora, your inauthentic self, your desire for money, recognition, success were flawed because they weren't coming from an authentic basis. So, there's no use in drinking purified water and then going and taking a drink out of the tap. It seemed to, the tap water, I guess, if you can call that my inauthentic self, became to intoxicate or tarnish the purified water. So it became a useless exercise, because it didn't matter how much authenticity I displayed. If I became inauthentic, it was like it turned off my flame, it turned off my light, and it kept reminding me that was not okay. It was like I was running up to a wall, hitting the wall, and falling back down, time and time and time and time again. So how I knew half in, half out wasn't going to work this time was because it never did. I just didn't have the objective viewpoint. I hadn't yet been able to sit back, step back, and be still to even realize I was living in that way. I was presenting a certain way. I was putting on different facades and masks to fit in, to be loved, to be accepted, to be supported, when what I really needed to do was to find that within for myself first, and then have, yes, that external validation, but not rely and depend upon that external validation in order to feel okay, because I could be okay simply by being my authentic self. And the world was simply a reflection and a prompter that I was being my authentic self, but also my authentic good self. Because there's a difference between being yourself and being, well, good, or doing things that aren't good and aren't ethical, legal, moral, and otherwise kind. In the darkest moments, what kept you anchored? I thank God every single day. Without God, there would not be me existing on this earth. That I know for sure. Without my faith, I was faithless and hopeless, and I would have not made it. So that was first and foremost what kept me anchored. Having a faith that I didn't know what was going to happen, but I believed. And faith and belief I united in force, because I believed that there was a higher calling for me. I believed there was a reason why I was suffering and going through these painful experiences, and I was going through and had decided to go through this process to rebuild myself. There was a reason and a purpose. I didn't know, there was no proof in the pudding yet, but I believed there was. I believed there was a different way. I believed things could improve. Things hadn't improved, but I believed it. And that faith, that belief, it was like being able to charge up my phone every time I lost my way or my charge became low. It charged me back up. Second, it was the support. It's interesting because you'd think that going on this journey, it's meant to be solo. It's a journey back to yourself. So therefore it is meant to be done on your own. That's not true. I recruited an incredible team I'm so grateful for, and still have many of them in my team. That being my chosen family, who are my friends, my anchors who I could lean on for support, but also just to hang out and feel like there was something to do other than be stuck in my own thoughts and my own process. I had my therapist, my clinical team, people with lived experience. I had healers, new age therapists, hypnotherapists, shamans, clairvoyant readers. I lent into anything that I felt would give me some anchorage, guidance, and support to go on the right path and to find my way and to fumble through, because it wasn't a smooth ride. It was messy, it was chaotic, it was up, it was down, and everything in between. So to have that anchoring with other people who have survived what I'm going through, to help me along the way, and people who with experience dealing with people with these kinds of thoughts and feelings I was having, and the anchoring of faith, of being able to steer me ahead and keep me believing that things could get better. You know, it was not a linear journey. Overall it was, but with lots of ups and downs and ups and downs and ups and downs in between. I'm so grateful for that. And the biggest anchor of all was myself. To be able to use the skills of self-regulation, to apply the therapeutic skills I'd learned, to take on and repeat positive messages of affirmation to myself that I was going to be okay and that I was going to get through this. Those repeated prompts and reminders, and doing the work, you know, the basics of life, exercise, eating well, looking after my body, turning towards plant medicines. I tried lion's mane, and I still use it now. It's been a great anchoring for me in terms of my mood and my nervous system. I'm so grateful for everything. I'm so grateful that I found something to anchor me, because I needed it, because it was like a small little, not even a ship in the ocean, I was a canoe in the deep sea trying to find my way. And thank goodness I had bigger ships around me to support me as I ventured along. What did you want someone in their own nowhere understand? Don't do it alone. You're not alone. You're never alone. You have God, you have spirit, you have faith. You have people. If they're not people in your family or social circles or network, there are therapists, there are call lines, there are empathic people at the ready with the skills to help you when you're in crisis. There are safe spaces, there are people who have lived experience, so have been through similar things. When you don't want to reach out and you want to go within because that feels like safety, reach out. Trust me, reaching out works when it's done to the right people. So build your team, build your army. Don't go alone, because you don't need to prove you can. Maybe you can, but why go on such a hard, difficult path when there are resources around you, a lot of them free, that you can access to get back on track? And please leave guilt and shame and embarrassment at the door. It's not weak. It is not weak to get help. It is smart. And for a lot of you, it will save your life. And know that even if you don't know, your life is worth living, because you don't know what's going to happen next. Find out what or who your authentic self is, what works for you, what doesn't, what is in alignment, what isn't. Find your tribe or your people that resonate with you and share your values. If you're like me and you can't go half in, half out, make tough choices. And if you can go half in, half out, make sure you have healthy boundaries and align them. Be smart, strategic, and if you can't be, outsource strategy, outsource smart people who've been down this road and who can help you along the way. You are not alone. You are never alone. And we can do this together because there are people before you who have.